An explanation of the 2012 AP Computer Science A free response question number 4. It deals with a grayscale image, okay, that's represented by a two-dimensional rectangular array. Instantly, we should see that we are going to have to access all elements potentially, fundamentally, of a two-dimensional array. It says that a white pixel is represented by 255 and a black pixel is represented by 0. So on quick observation, we can see that they want us to count the white pixels in part A, and it looks like they want me to process this image in part B. Count white pixels seems to be pretty straightforward, where a white pixel is 255. Process this image in part B. We'll process the image in row major order and decrease the value of each pixel at the current row and column by the value at row plus 2 and column by 2 if it exists. Oh, so it looks like we're being challenged with staying in bounds here. So let's keep moving forward and look at the examples to help us get a firm understanding of what these problems are asking us. So write the method count, part A, write the method count white pixels that returns the number of pixels in the image that contain the value white. So it says that assume that the pixel values, all right, array, this is the private value here, all right, that has been instantiated. All of these methods are object methods. They do not have static on them, so we can assume at this point that this two-dimensional integer array named pixel values has been instantiated and has these values or some set of values inside of them when we begin processing. So it says it returned 5 because we see 255, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 times. So this is a pretty straightforward problem where we have to fundamentally, again, access all of the elements and count the ones that are equal to 255. So I'm just going to start by coding my solution over here by typing the signature that's provided. Okay, the function returns an integer. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to declare an integer. I'm going to call it count. Always initialize your data that you actually create locally with inside of a method. And I need to access all. So fundamentally, a nested loop is needed here. I'm going to use R for my row. And as long as my row is less than, well, if you look back at the problem, just to for verification, we have an integer, two-dimensional integer array named pixel values. How do we get the number of rows from pixel values? That's pixel values.length. And we want to access each row, so we'll increment by 1. And in the inner loop, we're going to access each particular element within each row, which will give me the column. So if column is equal to 0 and column is less than pixel values, well, we have to go to the current row and get its length, and then we want to access each one of those particular elements within that row or for each column. And the question is asking us to identify the values that are equal to 255. So we simply need to do a simple selection statement here, an if statement, that will allow us to check the value of the element at each position. So pixel values at row R and column C. If that is equal to 255, then we can add 1 to the count. That will allow us to access each element in the array. And when I'm done accessing each of the elements in the array and tallying the count, I can simply return count. and that will be written on this white page by hand on the day of the exam. In part B, they want us to write the method process image that modifies the image by changing the values in the instance variable pixel values. So we're going to actually be processing pixel values again in part B. So the pixels in the image are processed one at a time in row major order. Okay, so it processes the first row in the array from left to right, and then the second row from left to right. So this is very fundamentally consistent with what we've been practicing in class. The pixel value at the current row and column is decreased by the value at position row plus 2 and column plus 2 if it exists. If it exists. So this is clearly a question about staying in bounds here. Okay? And if it does exist, all right, they're saying once we do the subtraction, if it's less than the value of black, which is 0, the pixel is assigned the value of black, which is 0. Okay? The values of the pixels for which there are no pixel at position at column row plus 2 and column plus 2 remain unchanged. Okay? So we can assume that all of the values in the array are within 0 to 255 inclusive. So they give us a little example here, and the example shows that 221 is still 221 because at column plus 2 and row plus 2 and column plus 2, that's 1 2 1 2, that value is 0. It says 184 remains 184 because 1 2 1 2, that value is 0. So I'm subtracting by 0. However, look at this one. This one says that value 178, 1 2 1 2. We're going to subtract out 78, which is at row 2 plus column plus 2, and the result is 100. So that is 178 minus 78 gives us 100. And notice that these values are unchanged. Why are these values unchanged in the last two columns and the bottom two rows? Simply because plus 2, 1, 2 puts me out of bounds on the array. So I have to make sure that I respect those particular constraints. And in this next page, we'd simply write the function. So over here, we're just going to write it. And I'm going to start by simply typing the signature that's provided, process image. And we know that we have private data. It's a void method, so I won't be actually returning any data. I will actually be updating the array pixel value, the two-dimensional array pixel values. So I do need to access them all and I'm going to use this same general structure from the previous problem, where I am going to simply access all of the rows, then access all of the columns, but my question is going to be different here. Now, if they want me to actually stay in bounds at row plus 2 and column plus 2, it might be useful for me to stop 2 rows short and to stop 2 columns short, and that'll make sure that whenever I reference row plus 2 and column plus 2, I will still be in bounds. And the only thing I really need to do is check for the value. Once I get the value, I'm going to actually decrease the value by the value at row plus 2 and the column plus 2. And if it is less than 0, I will just set it back to 0. So I'm going to be very deliberate about this so that everyone can see my process. I'm showing my work so that everybody can see my mindset and my process here. So I'm going to say int current is equal to pixel values at the current row and the current column. And what they want us to do is to get the plus 2. I'm going to call it plus 2. And that's going to be what? At pixel values row R plus 2 and column plus 2. Now note, just for explanation, if I'm looking 2 ahead, I have to make sure that I stay 2 short, okay, on my actual access to stay in bounds. Now, the only thing I need to do now is calculate a difference. I'm going to say int differ is going to be equal to my current minus my plus 2 location. And if my differ is less than 0, then I will simply set my pixel values at my current row and my current column to 0, which is black. Else I will simply set my pixel values at my current row and my current column to differ, which would be whatever that difference is. And that in essence is a valid solution for part B of this problem.